I don't know if I'd ever want to do 24 hours, nothing but net without the inspiration of my friend Buzz Williams, the head coach at Texas A&M. And Buzz and I have been friends for a long time. We go way back, and every year he and Corey, his wife, and his family are tuned in, watching, listening, and supporting our events. So thank you, Buzz.
Yeah, I'm excited to be a part of it. I wonder, how many years have you been doing this now?
This is year 5, year 4 in the driveway. And when you tune in this year, you're going to see a nice wooden court on my driveway that my friend John Prather has given us. And
wow. So you put a court down on the driveway?
Yeah, it's going to be cool. We're hope for good weather. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. I mean, between that and a broken finger, man, I'm hoping that, AARP mail, broken finger, a nice court with good branding. Right.
Next year, you need to charge admission for people to come watch in sessions. They can't watch the whole time. They have to pay for segments of time.
Well, look, you have always been a leader in this space because you have always led with your time and your effort. Buzz's Bunch comes to mind. And then I know you get involved in Gary Blair's event and help him with his event for Special Olympics. Where's that come from, Buzz?
I think I was raised by 2 really good people. And I think that's what we're supposed to do. I think we're supposed to give. I think we're supposed to help. And I think it's a paradox that the more you give and the more you help, the more it seems as though things are given to you and people are helping you. And so this is what we're supposed to do, I think. And it doesn't matter whether it's basketball related or not. The stuff that Coach Blair's done here over the last 2 decades is like beyond remarkable. I went to, obviously this weekend, he had his event, he had his auction, and then there's a lot of other things that he does that are not announced during that weekend. And I participated in most of the things that were not announced because sometimes I don't want it to be because I'm there. And so I did a lot of the things kind of off the itinerary. I did find out, I think Coach Neighbors and his band is going to sing at some point during your 24-hour span. So I told Coach, I said, I gotta find out from Debbie when the band's playing, so my kids help me zoom in and watch this. So when Neighbors' band is playing, we're gonna watch.
Oh, well, I'll tell you right now, they're going to be playing between 5 and 6 p.m. Eastern on May 13th. So we're very excited about Mike and his band and their performance. And I also love the fact that I know your wife, I know your kids, Buzz, and I think it's really cool that your kids are as interested in what we're doing.
They keep up with all of it, as you know. They're wondering why they can't do the Zoom. When I told them this morning, I said, I think Debbie's shoot-a-thon's coming up soon, and Bubba said, well, when is it? And I go, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm about to do the interview with her. And Bubba said, so when are we going to get to do one? I said, you have to take that up with Debbie. I'm not in charge of the guests.
Well, you know what? I would love to have Bubba on. As a matter of fact, I'll just tell you right now, we'll link him in on a live link and let him spend a little time hanging out with us in the evening hours.
Yeah,
later in the night when those young kids are still awake.
Yeah, obviously Corey knows about it because she's handles the technology relative to giving, and Sissy and Bubba, obviously you've known, and now Mason and Baby are into it. So we watch all of it.
Well, you're so great to do that. And I love that I do get to know your kids. And Sissy, tell me what she back from being.
She's killing it. She's leaving for the Holy Land next week. She's done a fabulous job. Corey's been unbelievable, and the mom that she's been to her. She's finishing her junior year at James Madison. She's getting a degree in social justice. It's the only school in the country that has a justice program, and I don't know for sure. I try to stay away from it because I want her to decide, but she wants to give her life to those that don't have a voice. And as you know, she's been to Africa. She's been literally all over the world. She's going to the Holy Land for a couple of weeks next week. And this program is basically to give a voice to those that don't have them. And whether that's to be a lawyer, whether that's to be a missionary, I don't think she's quite figured that out. I think she'll go to school for a few more years as she sorts through it all, but very involved in young life. She has her own school now that she's in charge of. And she's doing great. So all of them are doing good. They're all kind of ready to be out of school, regardless of what school they're at. So our kids, our players just finished on Friday. And so we've got a little bit of a break. I take the staff on a coach's trip every year. And last year we went to Vegas and hung out. And this year we're going to leave as soon as I finish. The bus is already out here. Everybody's in the bus. Everything's packed up. And we're going to go to Lake Charles, Louisiana. I've never been there, but play golf one day, play pickleball one day, eat really nice food both nights, 3 nights in a row, and just kind of hang out. We work so hard. I've got to do a better job of allowing them to have fun, and they'll have more fun when I'm not around them. So I'll probably have to go on a walk every day so they can have a break from me. But that's what we're doing later today.
It's funny you say Lake Charles, Louisiana, because I actually was there. McNeese State University is there, and they had their conference tournament. I was there, and that's a beautiful place to take your staff. I'm sure that they're going to love it.
Vegas was a little more expensive. Vegas kind of cut into the Vegas cut into a few more categories than I thought. I was trying to be nice, and it was the first time I'd ever done it, and we had a heck of a time. So we've been looking forward to this. The recruiting period ended on Thursday, and so this will be good. Our players aren't in town, and we're not allowed to leave campus recruiting, so we're going to take 3 days off and just hang out.
Okay, so last year when we chatted, you kind of, got screwed by the NCAA. I don't want to say it any other way except for say that way. And then this year you had such a remarkable year. It was so fun watching your team. I thought they played as hard as they ever play for you. Your kids always play hard. What did you learn from the disappointment of last year that propelled you to have the kind of success that you had this year, especially into the postseason?
Yeah, there were a lot of lessons, Debbie. I don't know that how I handled not being invited to the tournament was the right thing. I was ridiculed on a lot of levels. I understood that prior to doing it. I understood possibly the impact that it could have on my career. But for the players, their families, our staff, their families, I felt convicted that it was the right thing. I think one of the things that I think helped from that is team rule number 1 is always tell the truth, comma, no matter your emotional state, period. Secrets are lies. And we spent a lot of time last offseason and even in the preseason making sure that we always 1000% abided by team rule number 1. We had a really bad, shaky, non-conference start. We were 6-5, had bad losses, had no good wins. Christmas was not fun. We lost a guarantee game, the first guarantee game we've lost here against a good team. They beat us from start to finish. But I think always being completely truthful when it's hard. Everybody says they want the truth and be real, but a portion of that is, do you have the guts to do that? And then the flip side of that is, do you have the guts to receive the truth? And I don't think anybody would have thought that we would have went 15-3 in the SEC. I'm not sure anybody was thinking we would go to the SEC tournament championship for the second year in a row. I don't think anybody was thinking all of those things, that at 6-5, we would win our last 2 non-conference. We would go undefeated at home in the SEC, that we would win 15 games. There were things that were done here this year that hadn't been done in decades. But we never got lost in translation and all of that. We stayed really grounded to the day. I don't think that we had to win 15 games to go to the NCAA tournament at 6-5, but we knew that we had to win a lot. And so we restructured how we spent our days prior to class, after class, in the evenings. We tightened up some of our scouting report processes on what we do 2 days before a game, what we do 1 day before a game, and even made some modifications, to be honest with you, Debbie, and what we did at shoot around and what we did in pregame. And there were a lot of really good lessons, not just basketball lessons, probably more leadership lessons. But the character of our group is what allowed it to happen. It wasn't exclusively because of our talent. We have really, really good people in the organization, the adults, the young adults. And so there was never any drama that caused trauma. And that was because of the character. And so I think without that, especially in 2023, I can't lead if there's drama, especially if that drama is because of character. And so we were blessed way more than we deserved, and it was way better than we could have thought. But in hindsight, looking back, to be able to do that, it's impossible without the character of all the people that were involved.
One of the things that I absolutely love about being around you, Buzz, and watching your teams and listening to you is that I always hear a little bit of science, but I always hear a little bit of art. You know, I think there's a great combination here about, you know, how you see the game, how detailed your prep is, and then how you have a great feel for combining the analytics and the science with the character, the non-negotiable part of what you do. I'd be curious, like, if you were trimming your process and your scouts, tell me one of the things that you did, because I don't think you ever leave anything unturned.
Yeah, I changed my process in all of this in regards to where I spent my time. It became very much Groundhog Day. It was today game day, was today 1 day before a game, was today 2 days before a game, or was today day off. And it's interesting. I held myself pretty accountable in looking back, but I also did a good job of making sure I was being held accountable to the right information. And that required I dispersed my time differently than I ever have in my career. The time that I spent with our players, the time that I spent with our defensive coordinator, the time I spent with our offensive coordinator, the time I spent with the guy that basically teaches me and is working ahead on the scout on the next opponent. I kind of restructured my day. And I think one of the things that I realized was, because I was getting fed different information and how I was using it, that translated to what I gave the kids at a different time, but also at times, Debbie, in a different way. I think our guys knew, we call it big rocks. What are the 4 things that you have to know in order to win? There was no confusion on the big rocks. I think that helped. And there's always, and I understand, I'm very self-aware, probably too many numbers, but also at the same time, using those numbers to teach them why it's important. I think you have to explain the why before anything else anymore. And I do use analytics and numbers to couple with the film to explain the why. I think anytime you know the why, regardless of your role on the team, if you know the why, it creates more ownership. And we had extreme ownership from top to bottom. Guys that didn't play, guys that our walk-ons, we call the blue team. Our blue team was tremendous. Video coordinator, like, everybody had a role and everybody had ownership. And I think that's what made it so special.
I've heard a lot of coaches say, in game, that they don't, because you're standing up and you're in front of your bench, you don't always see the body language, the reaction of what's happening behind you. I have never one time not seen anyone on your staff exactly the way you described it, all the way to the person that might be sitting in that very last seat that's not aware, engaged, understands, ready, however you want to define it. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, if you put a camera on your staff, I know you'd be pleased.
Yeah, you'll like this story because I know you know Coach. Coach Wainwright, I always tried to get to hire me as an assistant when I was young. Eventually, I hired Coach as one of those. I've always had at least one fired head coach on my staff. And so I hired Coach at Marquette the year that we went to the Elite Eight. And his job was whatever, special assistant to the head coach or something. And so he'd been there about a month, and this is Jerry Wainwright. And I said, one morning, I said, "Hey, Coach, how you doing? Good morning." And he was like, "Hey, Buzz, do you have like 5 minutes?" I was like, "Sure." And he said, "Hey, I've been here a month, and I'm not sure what you want me to do." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you haven't told me anything to do." And I was like, "Well, Coach, that's why I hired you." And he said, "Why did you hire me?" I said, "I was hoping you could tell me something to do. I didn't hire you to tell you something to do every day. If you can't figure out how to help us, then I don't want you here. I know you'll figure out some way to help us." So about a month later, he came back and he said, "Hey, I've been watching every Big East game." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, what have you learned?" He said, "Well, I wanted to sit down and talk to you about it whenever you have time." He had watched every Big East game that Marquette had just played in year 4. We went to the Sweet 16. That was our second Sweet 16 in a row. And so he watched from the 18 Big East games, the Big East tournament, and then the 3 NCAA tournament games. And he said, "I'd like to sit down and talk to you about it." And I said, "Well, Coach, I don't know if we need to sit down and talk about all of that, do we?" I said, "Just tell me the one thing that you learned." He said, the thing that I've seen that I don't know how to answer is you never talk to the players when they come off the bench, when they come to the bench." He goes, "You give them dap and then you just keep paying attention to who's playing." And I said, "Well, Coach, I'm not smart enough to take my eyes off the game and coach the guys that just came out. That's what everybody else is supposed to do, isn't it?" He goes, "I watched every game. You gave dap to every kid and then never spoke to them when they went to the bench." And I said, "No, Coach, that's what you're going to do. That's what everybody else is going to do. Help them get ready the next time they go in." He said, "I've never seen it in my career." And I said, "Well, I have to stay locked into what we're doing." And so as the year unfolded that he was on our staff year 5 and year 6 at Marquette. He didn't realize that everybody has buckets that they are in charge of. So when he was watching those games, he didn't know that when somebody went past me, that everybody on the bench had a role relative to their buckets, specific to the game, specific to the kid that just came out, specific to the kids that are in the game, that are on the bench. And so I think you can coach guys as hard as you want, as long as you love them with that same level of hardness, so to say. And I don't think there's any confusion whether you're the director of scouting, whether you're a walk-on, whether you're the student trainer or the student manager. I think everybody has a role, and I think everybody can find a way to be great at their role and to help us. And yeah, I think that that's important. But we also break it down on levels that are probably not worth the time on this interview, but it's not just me, it's everybody within the organization. They have a job to do, not just on game day, but every day. And whether it's game day or not, you should be a little bit better today at your role than you were yesterday, because we practice that ownership in all that we do and all the ways that we do it.
There's 2 things that come to mind listening to you, Buzz, while you're talking about that. One is, that old cliche, like, you can coach my team and I could coach your team and I could win with your team based on the way that I set my system up. So I know if the character of those kids were good, then I could coach them. The other thing is, I think you could coach football. You're so organized. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
not
love
every
football.
basketball coach could do that. I don't know a lot of basketball coaches I think could manage that many. I think you could definitely do it.
Well, I spend more time, you know this. I've done a little bit of it. I was able to do it one time in April, and I'll be able to do it more in June for sure. But I spend more time studying football and football coaches and football leadership than I do basketball. I don't have a lot of friends in the basketball world. I spend more of my time learning from football. I think they are better teachers. They're better coaches. They're better delegators. The operation is just so much bigger. And so as much as I can, I try to spend time. I'll go to 3 or 4 OTAs that I have scheduled with NFL teams. I did 3 last year. I've been to a couple of colleges. I don't ever promote that because it's not that I'm not for Jimbo Fisher or Texas A&M. I'm just trying to learn. Sure. But yeah, I love football. I don't know anything about football, but I think that that's why it's good for me to be in an environment that I'm unfamiliar with, so it forces me to have to pay more attention so that I can learn something and then try to learn it enough so that I can translate it back to our organization. And so I don't know, that's kind of always been that way, but I do think that being around football coaches, probably through osmosis, I kind of orchestrate how we go about things. Like if you came to one of our staff meetings, the defensive coordinator is going to speak. The offensive coordinator is going to speak. The special teams coordinator is going to speak. The director of personnel is going to speak. But that's kind of what happens, Debbie, when we do a scouting report. Like, it's not just for me. Like, everybody in the organization knows who's in charge of what buckets, including our players. And we want to make sure as the adults that we are an unspoken example of how a team should function, how a team should work together. Instead of just saying it, we want to be that example. And so that you have seen it because you've been around us, but there will be times that a player is not going to me to ask a question because he knows it's not my bucket, so to say. He's going to ask somebody else. That doesn't mean that it doesn't eventually migrate to me in some capacity, but there's never any confusion. This player is going to talk to this person. This player is going to talk to that person for different reasons. That is very football-esque. But that is how we do things as well too.
Well, you have mastered it at a very high level against some really good competition in your league and nationally. You're on the map with Texas A&M basketball, which is just absolutely amazing, Buzz. You continue to prove to be a winner everywhere you go, and it's not just on the court, it's off the court with the young men that you deal with. And I'm so grateful for your time. I can't believe you're holding up the bus for us, but we do know the bus waits for the head coach.
They're not worried. They're probably having more fun because I'm not on the bus.
Thank you so much, Buzz.
Thank you.
Tell
Good to see you.
I'll be looking for him. Have a great trip with your staff.
Thank you so much. Take care, Debbie. Bye-bye.
See ya.